Everybody, I wanted to give a bit of a precursor to this video. Now, you're going to notice that there are some severe audio issues, and I wanted to assure you that I didn't downgrade an equipment. In fact, I have a brand new microphone on its way, but it's not going to be here for 2 weeks, hence my posting this video in the condition that it's in. Now, the reason that I'm speaking in such a low tone of voice is not going for an ASMR effect. In fact, I'm sitting about 4 feet away from my microphone, and if I speak at any higher volume, your ears will bleed, as mine did when I reviewed the audio after I recorded, much to my surprise, dismay, and horror. I hope that you will please bear with me. I have a new microphone on the way, and I promise the next video is going to sound much better. Thanks, guys. Lately, I've been hearing the term imposter syndrome a lot, and it's been popping up in conversations with a lot of my friends recently. And the reason it's been coming up, I think it's a lot of people sort of being introspective and thinking a lot about their comings up in the goth scene. And a lot of the people that I speak to now are people that I met by way of YouTube. A lot of their experiences kind of coming into the goth scene was really online, and they have felt this imposter syndrome. And the term itself, even though I hadn't heard it, seems pretty self-explanatory, but I still Googled it. And after Googling and having a really good look, I realized that, oh my God, I had that. Did you ever see that really cute meme that's been circulating? It's like, be the goth queen you wanted to be when you were 12. This one. As it reminded me of when I was younger, looking up to the older goths in absolute awe. I definitely experienced something akin to imposter syndrome. It hit me in the face, it knocked me on my ass, and it was bittersweet. Before I got my first glimpse of a New York City goth club, I thought that I was primed and prepped, and I had seen it all. I mean, in my mind, I was a veteran, because here I'd spent my 1 year, 14 to 15, kind of going to all of the alternative events in Long Island. Not in the city, Long Island. And I had seen women with shaved heads and tampons for earrings. I've seen a guy in a leotard, a gimp mask, breathing fire. I have seen boys wearing makeup and dresses, and it may not seem like that big a deal to you, but in 1994, to a 14-year-old, this is the kind of thing that was deemed taboo. This 14-year-old. Age 15, I had hit my very first real, honest-to-God goth club in NYC. Bank in the Batcave were my first real introduction to legit goth girls, and my first glimpse at the luscious manes, elaborately perfect makeup that I could in no way replicate, not with years of practice. Clothing, it was intense. I had never seen anything like it, but it was diverse, but it was the same in the way that apples, oranges, but they're still fruit. There were a lot of people that had their thing. It was their signature look. It was very much their own. And some of it was period looks. Like you had, for example, your more ethereal looks, which I would say for reference would be more like your Monica Richards and Lisa Hammer, your very ethereal looks. Brocades, empire waist, dripping bell sleeves, very Renaissance in look, but not something that you would see in a Ren Fair with a giant turkey leg. I can't even think of any way to describe it other than just ethereal. And then you had your other period looks, which took another road entirely, which was your Victorian looks. And then you had girls in capeless, underbust corsets, bustles, ringlets in their hair, but not in the way that you're thinking. The way that I'm describing, you might be thinking of a lot of the photos that you see at Way of Gothic Treffen. Not the case. This was not a polished look. There was an edge to it. There was a grittiness to it. This wasn't something that was created for the runway or for a photo op. Even the ones that didn't have their signature sort of period look, they still looked, I mean, incredible. And I would go home and I would draw them. I would sketch them, and it was something that I would aspire to. And there were these girls, I remember these girls, and if you were a veteran in the New York City goth clubs at the same time as me, I'm about to hit your nostalgia button super hard. There were these two girls. I thought that they were twins. Turns out they weren't even sisters. They were just very close friends. You never saw one without the other. And they had Same build, same height, same features, and if they didn't have the same features, they did their makeup so elaborately that it looked like they had the same features, but their signature look was these incredibly long, super thin black braids that went well past their butts, sometimes adorned with ribbons, and they were incredible looking. And I just wanted to be the third. I'm like, let me just be the triplet. It's well over 20 years, and I'm trying desperately to describe their style. And the best way I can describe it is think begotten. Everything long, sleeves are long, dress is long, and it's in velvet, satin. I could get into all the other styles, but you know what? I think it's worthy of another video. So I'm going to get into that in the future. However, what I really want to focus on is what all of these girls made me feel like. In one word, garbage. Silly, ignorant, little, naive 15-year-old me thought that my one-year stint in the alt scene afforded me the ability to not only blend in seamlessly with these goth girls, but to be able to rub elbows with them on a level to which I would be on par. No. The very first wave of insecurity hit me when I was waiting online to get into the club. This was my first time there, and it was really me getting my first glimpse of everybody that was already there waiting to get in, and then everyone joining the line. And the first thought in my head was, I feel so short. I felt so short because I was short. I'm only 5'2". I'm 15 at the time, thinking I'm going to grow. Spoiler alert, I'm still the same height. And all of these girls are wearing these big platform shoes, not your cybergoth shoes, but Google Pennangalan Dreams. Take a look at those boots. Look at the platforms. They're now being mass-produced by Demonia, but at the time they were the pinnacle of goth footwear. I didn't really see that many pikes or winkle pickers. I don't know if maybe New York just didn't vibe with them, particularly at that point in time. What I did see in girls were a lot of what were referred to as either granny boots or witch boots. And the granny boots had more of a rounded toe and more of a platform on them, whereas the witchy ones were a little bit more pointy, but not to the caliber of like the winkle picker or the pike. But I'm kind of getting off point here. But as I'm waiting online, I'm realizing real fast that I am not as cool as I thought I was. Doors open, we make our way into the first corridor, the doorman is there, and we hand them our club pass because without that club pass you are paying $15 to get in. 15 takes you to 10 and you're feeling pretty damn cool as you enter at a reduced rate. Walk through the second set of doors into the main room, and I had never felt more like a messy kid than I did at that moment. I thought I looked pretty cool when I left the house. I'm going to be honest, I had a short black bob, parted down the middle, behind the ears, Cleopatra eyes, which I thought I knew how to do, but I couldn't really do it that well, and I used to draw it so far in the middle that it looked like it just connected right here. Eyebrows, do not get me started on 90s eyebrows. I think we've all pretty much have been there. My clothes, plain black, long sleeve, tight shirt, long black skirt, no belt, no corset, no belt, no nothing. Rosary beads and a dog collar. Like I said, I thought I looked pretty damn cool before I left the house, and then I saw statuesque, teased hair, corseted goddesses walking by, and felt like I was ready for my shift at Banana Republic Crack Edition. I mean, sure, I knew the music that was being played, and some of it I didn't. What I didn't, I mustered up the courage to go ask the DJs or someone else, but I knew enough to know that I belonged there, like I was meant to be there. But at the same time, for a good few years actually, I had this niggling feeling in the back of my mind, this insecurity that I just didn't belong because I didn't look like everyone else. There was no way that I could replicate what they had years of experience doing. The makeup, their hair, acquiring the clothing, a lot of which I didn't realize that they made. Also, a lot of which came from very expensive stores. But either way, it was a lot for my adolescent brain to take, and I did often feel very, very insecure. And it didn't go away for a little while. In my mind, I felt like, put me in a lineup with all of these girls, and I'm going to be the one that stands out for all the wrong reasons. I didn't look like them. I wanted to, but I didn't have the resources. I felt like every single one of them were looking at me thinking, what is she doing here? She doesn't belong. What a poser. But I didn't give up. I didn't stop going because my love of the music and being able to dance with my friends, the atmosphere by far superseded all of that. I knew that one day I would get it. I always had fun when I was there. I always had a blast, but that feeling of not measuring up, it was always there. And that's where my habit of singing along to songs came from, because I felt like, well, if I don't feel like I can fit in on an aesthetic level, at least they'll know I'm legit and I'm here for the right reasons when they know that I know the music. Here's the thing about the way that I felt, that insecurity, that feeling of not being good enough to be accepted as one of the flock. I did that to myself. Not one person ever once said a word to me. They never ridiculed me about the way that I looked. I shopped all the black clothes in all the regular stores. Not one thing that I owned exceeded $15. And I would daydream about this store called Religious Sex. Any of you from NYC, you know this store. I would daydream about being lured in Mission Impossible style after hours and just robbing the place blind because, you know, actually being able to afford it is far less plausible than sophisticated grand larceny. Don't steal. I was looking at everyone else wearing the things that you would find in that store or looking the way that I wanted to look, and I proceeded to convince myself and came to the conclusion that I wasn't good enough. I was seeing myself through the eyes of these elder Goths and placing judgments on myself and taking it as gospel. Who the hell knows what they were actually thinking, but whatever it was they were thinking, they never said it to me. I'm the one that placed these financial limitations on myself, that said that I couldn't afford to be part of the scene that I loved. I did it to me, not them. After being involved for a while in a combination of just growing up, I guess, in the subculture and just making more friends and becoming more familiar with everything as a whole, I started to feel more myself. I started to come into myself a little bit more comfortable with my appearance, and those feelings eventually, they went away. Let's fast forward like 20 some odd years from now, and all of these insecurities are a distant memory. I've started my YouTube channel, I've started to create videos, and suddenly, didn't take more than a couple of weeks until I actually started getting abusive comments. Comments that bordered on flat out bullying, and they were all completely about my appearance. The tone was, you're a fake. You don't look goth enough. You look so plain. Straight up rejecting me and the validity of my experiences, all because I didn't fit the modern template of what they felt goth should look like. And ironically enough, it was all of the untruths that I had been convinced of, that I convinced myself of, because of my own insecurities suddenly conjured into fruition so many years later. It was real now. I didn't have much of an understanding of what goth was doing out there, amongst the younger generation, but I hadn't realized that goth had grown to a different sort of medium. I hadn't realized that goth had existed almost solely online, and a lot of these people, their social lives existed here in this intangible realm, and unfortunately what this did was this ushered in a kind of new breed of something called fashion goths. Now, they're goths. They call themselves goths, but it's based purely on aesthetic alone. They don't participate, they don't listen to the music, they don't contribute, but what they do have is a credit card and active social media, which they use to kind of impose these rules on younger goths. And these younger goths are left with this insecurity that they're not good enough. The same insecurities I had when I was their age, only this time it's so much worse, because for me, it was all in my head. It was something that I did to myself. But to them, they're actually being told this by self-appointed goth experts every single time that they try to get involved in any way. And they're being told this by someone in a very convincing costume, and yes, it is a costume when you're dressed as something that you are not. Unbeknownst to the legitimate younger goth, because they're too young and inexperienced to know the difference, and they're just trying to exist and find their way. It's, disheartening, discouraging. I'd often get comments from these younger goths in my videos expressing their relief at seeing a goth, a more subdued goth, being represented, and that's not decked out in, the latest and greatest from, say, like punk rave or something like that. And they would tell me stories about how they'd been ridiculed and shut out because they weren't goth enough, or they didn't look extreme enough because they weren't able to afford it, they didn't own all of this stuff. Who the hell says something like that with a clear conscience? It's freaking mean. Here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with owning clothing from like Restyle, Dolls Kill, Punk Rave, Hillstar. I do. Granted, I bought it all used off of Depop because I'm just, very, very frugal, but I own it nonetheless, and so do a lot of us. But what's important to understand is it's okay to like these things. It's okay to want these things. It's okay to own these things. But it's not a requirement. These are not your ticket to gain entry into the goth scene. It doesn't make you any less or more of a human being. To a lot of the younger generation, I found that owning something by some of these brands is the difference between acceptance and rejection, and that's not the case. I can't remember if it was on Reddit or if it was on a Facebook sort of goth community. I'm sure maybe some of you who frequent those things might remember this post. It was someone who said, I didn't spend all of this money on Killstar to be told that I can't be a goth. As far as the goth scene is concerned, Killstar. It's okay to want it, it's okay to own it, but it is not a necessity. Big name goth wares does not define you, and it's not an appraisal of who you are as a person. The next person that tries to look you up and down and appraise you based on your wardrobe can go eat a pine cone. Find the way you are. Bye guys.